Hello guys, welcome to Houdini Made Simple. In this video we're gonna be creating the asteroid effects. We're gonna start creating a simple sphere and modifying this geometry so it looks like a rock, and later on we're gonna be copying this rock with some random orientations and some random scales so we have a realistic look on the final effect. Okay guys, let's start creating a basic sphere. I'm gonna hit the tab key to access the tab menu, type geometry to create a geometry node, hit enter, and once I'm inside I'm gonna create a sphere. Again, tab key, type sphere. In this case we wanna create a polygon type. I'm gonna hit enter. So right away by default you can see how this sphere is creating by polygons. Basically they are flat building blocks, and if you put them all together you're gonna create this rounded shape. And of course the more you have, the more detail you're gonna be able to create. And in this case, in this sphere, we can control how many subdivisions we have inside by controlling the number on rows and columns. So if I go here and I change this to 26, let's say make it double, and let's go 48, you're gonna have way more subdivisions. So when we start applying effects, we wanna be able to create a more detailed rock in this case. Just remember that as you increase your subdivisions on the geometry and you have more polygons, although you're gonna be able to create more detail, at the same time everything's gonna be heavier to work with. So just be mindful, because you're gonna need more memory and processing power from Houdini in order to handle the scene. So always be mindful about that. In this case we're working with really simple geometry, so it's not gonna be a problem. I'm gonna change this, instead of polygons mesh to polygon. As you can see now, this sphere is made of triangles. Before was made of quads. Since now we're working with triangles, we wanna use this frequency to increase or decrease how many subdivisions we have in this geometry. In this case, by default, you have 2, but you don't have too many details. It's gonna be hard to create the rock with this low polygon count. So we're gonna go up, and in this case, I'm gonna set this number to 25. I'm gonna leave all the rest as default. The radius is gonna be 0.5. Remember, this is expressed in meters, so we should be fine with these starting values. So once we have this sphere with enough resolution to start creating detail, I want to create some noise, so we have that deformation to create the look of a rock. In this case, I'm gonna go to the display option. I'm gonna select smooth shading so we don't see the wireframe, and I'm gonna hit tab and create a mountain node. Let's hit enter, connect the input to the output. And once we put the display flag on the mountain, we can see the end result already. So already we have kind of like a rock look, but I want to start playing with some of the parameters to have more control. The most important values over here is gonna be first the amplitude, meaning that the higher I go with this volume, the more noise I'm gonna create on the geometry. That's gonna be super important. And the other value that's going to be important is going to be the element size. So the higher you go, it's going to create a noise in a lower frequency. And if you go super low, it's going to create a noise in a really high frequency. So depending which kind of look we are looking, it's going to give you different results. In this case, the lower you go with the element size, usually you're going to have to go lower with the amplitude, because you're going to be more sensitive. So let's say I go lower with the amplitude and I start going even lower with the element size when I have this look. And again, if we go higher with the element size, we're gonna have to go up again to create the noise in a lower frequency. So in this case, I wanna leave these values for now. They work for me when I was doing the project. On the amplitude is 0.31, and on the element size is going to be 1, which is the default value. At the same time, I want to create a second mountain so I can create more detail in another frequency. In this case, we don't need to type a tab and create another mountain. We can hold the Alt key, click on the node and just drag the node, and this is going to duplicate the node. And now we can connect the output to the input, and we're going to set the display flag on the last mountain. And this is going to add on top as a second layer another noise to the geometry. In this case, I want to switch the amplitude and mainly the element size. So I'm going to create this noise in a different frequency. In this case, I'm going to go lower to create something in a higher frequency. So it's going to be 0.1 in this case. But as you see now, the intensity is too much. So I want to set the intensity, the amplitude, let's try a few values. Could be 0.2 or 0.1, something has to be more subtle. So let's leave it like this right now. And then we can always go back and switch if we think it's too much. So once we create this first rock, we want to scatter this same rock into multiple points within the 3D space. So one easy way to do that is to create a box, like a container. We're gonna try some values. We want to make it like a big box, so we're gonna try 7, then maybe 4, and let's make it like 20. Okay, the idea is that we have multiple times this rock within this box. So to do that, we're gonna create a points from volumes node, and let's connect the output to the input, set the display flag on the points from volume, and as you can see, we have a bunch of points inside the box. In this case, there are too many. So if we want to reduce the amount of points, we want to use the point separation volume on the parameters. So let's set this to a different value. Let's go higher. In this case, we have less points. That's good, but still they are too perfectly aligned. So we want to break this perfect alignment. So we're going to use the jitter scale, set this to 1. So now we have like a more organic look of the points within the box. We can even go lower on the point count. So let's set this higher. And I think that's good enough. I like the amount of points. So I'm gonna leave it at there. So in order to copy this rock to these multiple points that we just created, we can create a copy to points node. Copy to points node. And as you can see now, we have two inputs. One is saying the geometry to copy. In this case, it's gonna be the rock. And the second says require target points to copy to. In this case, the points we just created. So we're gonna connect this on the second input. And as you can see, if we set the display flag on copy to points, we can see all the rocks. And let's say we create a camera around here, right, to start playing with the angle and the effect. The problem is now the effect doesn't look nice because all the rocks, they look the same, same scale, same orientation. So we want to start playing with the rotation and scale so it looks way more natural. So I want to set up the camera first, hitting new camera. And now if we go back to the object level, you're going to see that you have one camera and the geometry. In this case, we want to rename this to rocks, or let's say asteroids. And now we can go back into the geometry level, and if you hold the Alt key and the left click, we can move from the camera, and let's start playing with some random scale. So there are a few ways to create a random scale. In this case, we have to play with the p-scale attribute, and we are going to create an attribute randomize. In this case, connect this between the points and the copy to points. And in this case, we can see right away that we have a lot of random colors. That's because the attribute that is randomizing is the CD, which is the color attribute within Houdini. We don't want that in this case. We want to play with the scale. The attribute that's gonna change the scale in Houdini is called P scale. So let's hit enter. And right away we can see on the viewport that they all have different sizes. And that's because in Houdini we have attributes within the points and geometry. And as I said before, the attribute that controls the size of these rocks is going to be the P scale. If we go to the geometry spreadsheet and let's say the display flag on points from volumes, these points, they don't have the attribute P scale, but once we go and we set the display flag on the randomize, we do have this attribute. It's important to understand that in this case we see 3 rows, 3 columns. So the P scale is a float attribute. In Houdini you have different types of attributes. The most common are the float and the vector type, and the float is always a single numerical value. So in this case, when here on the parameters, when it says dimension, we wanna set this to 1 because we only need 1 numerical value because the P scale is a float attribute. In this case, we can start playing with the min value and the max value depending how big we want to be the bigger rock and how small we want to be the smaller rock. So back in the viewport, we can start playing with the min value and max value. So let's set the display flag on the copy to points and let's select the attribute randomize. And we can start playing with especially with the min value. We don't want the smaller rock to be 0. We want to at least set this value to 0.1 or 1.5. So we have some small rocks and some bigger rocks. And then another value is going to be important is the global scale. Basically, this is a multiplier. So if we go higher with this, it's going to make everything 2.6 bigger. Or if we leave this at 1, it's going to be multiplying this value by 1 and this max value by 1. In this case, I'm going to set the global scale at 1 and leave the min value to 1.5, at least for now. And we can go back to the camera. So now we have different size. So if we bypass the P scale, you can see the difference. So it's already shaping up. So now it's already looking better. So I'm going to start playing with the rotation. I want random orientations. I don't want them to be with the same rotation. And again, there are many ways to randomize. Same as the P scale, we can randomize the orientation in many ways. In this case, we're going to keep it simple. We want to create another attribute randomize. Set this in between. Again, by default, this is changing the color, so it's going to give random colors right away. I don't want to change the color. I want to create the orient attribute. In this case, nothing is happening yet. So a few things we need to know about the orient attribute. The orient attribute is a vector 4. So in this case, we are going to set this to direction or orientation. And the last thing we need to do, as I said, this is a vector 4, so it's not 3 dimension. It's going to be 4. So I'm going to set this at 4. And now right away you can see how all the rotations, they are randomized. So if you go back to the camera, so now we have all the rocks with different orientation, same as the size. So now the effect overall is looking way more natural. I'm going to keep playing with the camera angle, so I'm gonna pause the video for a second and we'll be right back. So guys, after playing some time with the camera, this is the value I got to, in case you want to follow along. And then I also play with the size of the box. In this case, these are the values that I came up with. You can make, of course, the box bigger or smaller. You can add more points. And that's the beauty of Houdini. You can easily, let's say you want more points, you can get this value down. And you're going to have way more asteroids right away with random rotation, random scale. I'm going to get back to point separation of 2. But now you can play with these values. Same, you can keep playing with the rock attributes. You can even play with the scale, anything you want to. Is gonna be super friendly to now start modifying the final look. Okay guys, just to finish this video, we are going to create a null node. In this case, hit enter. The null node basically is pure for organization purposes. It doesn't do anything, so we're just gonna connect this, set the display flag on the null, and we can rename this, let's say, to out rocks. We can, if we want, we can color this. If we hit the C key on the keyboard, we can set this to black. So when we look at the overall node tree, we know that's gonna be the end result within this node. But basically, this is just for organization purposes. Okay guys, that's it for this video. We already have our asteroids flying through the space. So thank you guys for watching. If you want to support, please leave a comment, like and subscribe, and see you on the next one.